We have run more than 300 different A/B tests on well-known e-commerce brands. We know what works. And today, I want to explain you exactly how to set up an A/B test, what are the pitfalls you need to look out for, and how you can get winning tests. I'll explain you what to test, how to prioritize it, how to actually set up the test, analyze the results, and most importantly, how to deal with losing tests. Generally, you can come up with more ideas than you can actually test. So let's start with going through the data to figure out what is worth testing to make sure that you don't waste your time. So the first thing you want to do is by finding these problems. Every site is different. They have a different price point, different market, different traffic channels. So you want to look at the data of your store. Either Google Analytics or heat maps or Microsoft Clarity or any of the tools that you have available. Okay, so let's just start with this example from the Google Merchant Store. This is a very basic store where they sell some cups and branded stuff from Google. But it's a general e-commerce store, it just works. So we'll just look here at the example. Okay, so let's start off with the traffic acquisition. This generally gives you a good idea of where the traffic comes from, because the main driver of the conversion rate is actually what happens before the user comes to the site, where the traffic comes from and what do people think about the brand. If it's cold traffic, it's much more likely to convert at a lower rate than when it's email marketing. People already signed up and now they get an email. So the traffic distribution really defines the conversion rate. So here we can see most users are coming from direct or organic search, some unassigned, and then here's some ads. So very little ad traffic, which generally has a lower conversion rate. We can see the engagement rate, in particular here the purchase rate. We can see most purchases are coming from direct, which makes sense because it's the most traffic, but it has a lower conversion rate than the average on the site. And actually these two cold traffic channels has a higher conversion rate than any of the other, which is strange because as I mentioned, generally it's the other way around. Okay, just gives a quick idea. Then you want to look at the different pages that are being seen. Homepage has the 27% of the traffic. We see a lot of shop, checkout. I don't necessarily see any product URLs in the top 10. Where do users land? Not homepage, not SAP, and then a bunch of shop pages as well. Any particular conversion rate? If we look at purchase, we can see that the homepage converts at 0.85, below average. Shop new does very well. Okay, so now if we look into the e-commerce reports, we can see a funnel report that shows us where users abandon the funnel. And here we can see that out of 100 people, 100%, only 19% actually sees the product. And this is very low, because if someone doesn't see the product, they also don't consider the product. So if you're starting out, this is not a reason why your business or your product is not good enough. It's just because the traffic isn't coming to your product page. And of course, that's an issue because this is the first step. Here are most users. So if this step performs very poorly, everything after that already takes a hit because of this step having issues. So that's already a first problem that we can identify. And earlier we also saw that not many people see a page other than the shop page. And I dare to guess that the higher conversion rate we saw for paid traffic is because they're directly going to the product page instead of going to like a collection page or the home page. The path is shorter. Anyway, that aside, there's some other reports on checkout. We can see if something goes wrong here. But as we can see here, nothing surprising that comes along. Here we see about 2,000 users entering and 1,000 exiting. Half of the people, this is normal. We can also see that maybe for mobile, 400 entering and 100 making a purchase. That's 25%. While for desktop, 1,500, it's about half. So actually in mobile, the checkout rate is much lower. So this is another problem that we can solve later on. And then the last one, here on the e-commerce report, we can see for each individual product how they perform. So here we can see in the last 28 days, we have 2,700 users viewing this Nano Banano sweatshirt. 500 add to cart, 140 make a purchase. You can compare this with other products to see if there's a significant difference in the conversion rate. It might be that this product that's very popular is not being added to cart enough. So then you know, okay, maybe there's a problem on this specific product page. But depending on how much traffic you have, you can decide, can I run a test on only one product page or is any change I make across the board, which of course helps you collect more data. More on that in a second. The other thing you can look at, of course, is the product category. Am I offering product categories that people are just not interested in? Or is the conversion rate much lower on some categories than on others? This research is basically endless. You can go very deep into finding these hypotheses and problems that you need to solve. But it becomes obvious that this is the crucial thing to do. The other thing you can do, of course, is just go through the site, because the data might tell you where the issue is at, but not necessarily how to fix it. So if we just start at the homepage, because we saw a lot of people don't visit the product page. So we can go through the homepage, which is the most visited page, and see how easy it is to reach a product page. Here we can see there's a Shop New button. It takes you to a collection page. More links to collection pages. Basically every link so far takes you to a collection page. And generally you want to make your homepage shoppable, right? You want to show some best sellers or new products directly on the homepage. So users go there directly. So that's an assumption, right? We saw on the data, not many users visit the product page. We did see they land on the homepage. So there we already have our first test, adding more products to the homepage. Now, generally you keep going until you have many good ideas, but then you need to figure out what is the test that I should actually run. And there are different metrics for this. One, for example, is called ICE, which is just confidence, ease, and implementation, impact. It helps you to sort, but this is generally more subjective, because how confident are you, how easy is it, is not necessarily like an objective metric. So there's something called CLX prioritization metric, which is what I'll take you through right now. So you define your hypotheses. And here's an example, placeholder. Because we found X, we propose Y, expecting this will Z, right? So we found that not many people visit the product page. And we propose to add products on the homepage, expecting the conversion rate to go up by 2%. To make this objective, there are a few questions. Is it above the fold? Is it noticeable within 5 minutes? Adding or removing an element? Just different questions that make eventually a score at the end. And then the higher the score, the more likely this test is something you should focus on. Right, so at the end you want to sort it from high to low. And then you know the highest number is what you should test first. Because sometimes you can change a color on the button, which is very easy to do, but it's not going to do anything. So therefore, with a more complex questions like these, you know what to test. There's another important thing to look into, and now it gets a little bit more statistical, is that depending on how much traffic you have, you can decide what tests to run. So earlier we saw that there was one product page that got like 2,000 visitors in the last month. This is good to know, because if you want to test only on that page, you might not get enough traffic to really identify that your new version is better than the old version. And that's basically where it comes down to when you're A/B testing. There are many ways of looking at this, but there's something called a sample size calculator. You can find it everywhere on this site. So you can put in your current conversion rate. So let's say it's 3%. And then the minimal detectable effect should be relative, because we want an improvement of 5%. And let's say we make it 3%. So basically what this means is your current conversion rate is 3%. And then the minimal detectable effect is the change in conversion rate you want to achieve as a minimum. Because everything below is a smaller change from 3%, right? Because if your conversion rate is 3%, a 3% improvement only gets you to 3.09. So that's not a huge difference in conversion rate, but of course in revenue it could be. It's 3% more revenue. But if you're okay with detecting only 1%, you need a lot of data to kind of confirm, because it could be 2.9 or 3.1, right? But if you want to make it, I don't know, a 10% improvement, it's a much bigger jump. And then of course you need less data to kind of achieve that. Okay, so what this tells us is, in this case, we need a sample size of 51,000 different conversions. And if we're tracking for purchases, it means many purchases. Okay, so for you to define what you can test, you actually need to think a little bit about the statistics, because those are the results we'll get once we run the test. If your site is like Airbnb and you get like 1 million visitors per day, there's nothing to worry about. You have enough data. But most stores don't. So you only want to run tests that are actually getting enough data for you to confirm that your change actually beats the old version. So if you would change something on an about page hidden somewhere, it might not get enough visitors. So if we take a step back under the hood and look at the calculations, then there's a sample size calculator that we should consider. So what this basically helps us understand is how big should the sample size be. So if our current conversion rate is 3%, then if we change the button color, it's probably going to do nothing. So if you don't have millions of users, you're not able to detect if it's actually a winner or a loser. But if you change the complete website, it's definitely going to have an impact, either good or bad. And then you'll be able to more easily detect who's the winner with less data. And that's basically what this helps us with. So if our current conversion rate is 3%, and we want to detect a minimum change of 5%, so either it going down to 2.85% or 3.15%, then the sample size we need is 204,000. If we want to have a minimal detectable effect of 10%, it goes down to only 51,000. So here you can see that if the performance change is big, you need less data. If you make bold decisions, you need less data to confirm what's the winner. And if you make very small decisions, you need a lot more data. So depending on how big the traffic is that you get on your site, you can define if you should go for small changes or big changes. It's not a guarantee that big changes are going to improve the conversions better. That's definitely not true, but you need to be able to detect what's actually working. Okay, now knowing that, let's quickly fill out this row so we know if this is a test that we need to focus on. Okay, so here we got the hypothesis. The section is on the home page. Is it above the fold? No. So it's a 0. Of course, if it's above the fold, more users will see it and therefore it's more important. Noticeable within 5 seconds? Generally, I would say yes. Adding or removing an element? We're adding, which is more work than removing, so it's a 0. Designed to increase user motivation? No. Running on high traffic pages? Yes. Addressing an issue discovered via user testing? No. Addressing an issue discovered by qualitative feedback? No. Addressing insights found via analytics? Yes. Supporting a mouse tracking? No. Ease of implementation? Less than 4 hours? 3. Up to 8 hours? 2. It's probably less than 4 hours? 3. Section score? 1. Based on the homepage. And then the PLX score 8. So this score is pretty decent. Of course, it's relative to other points, but in this case, it would end up as an 8, which probably will end up somewhere in the top 5 tests that we should run. Okay, so let's say this is a test that we're going to build. This is good. We can go to the next step. Tests are built generally in an A/B testing tool. And what's important to note here is that most of the time you run a A/B test. So there is the control and then one variant. But you can also add multiple variants, right? So we've defined the hypotheses, but what's the actual solution we're not sure of. So we can test with one variant if we don't have that much data. But if we have lots of users, we want to test multiple things at the same time. Because that reason, seasonality is not playing a factor in our testing results. You want to run tests at the same time instead of first this one, the next week this one, and the week after that one. No, you want an A/B testing tool to just randomly dedicate one page to for user A, then to user B, C, D, and that way you get the most accurate results. Okay, so back to these A/B testing tools. There are many out there. So whatever your budget fits is suitable. Honestly, there is not that much of a difference. Now there are many tools that offer AI coding, which helps you speed up the process. When it comes to creating the code, it's often a add-on. So you have the current site and the testing tool adds more code to it. It's basically impossible to delete what it had before, especially if it's like a front-end editor, which is almost all A/B testing tools. You can also run a split URL test, which is where you change the URL the user goes to. And that's generally more done on the back end. It's better for page speed, but it's much more difficult to set up. Okay, so this is just a random example of how one of these tools work. Honestly, they're all kind of the same in their editor. Okay, so often you can add like a content block. You can choose where. Let's say here below. What you would like to have. Many of these A/B testing tools offer blocks like these to make it a little bit easier, but you can definitely also just write your own code, of course with AI or with your actual developer. You can add videos, images, often you can add like product recommendations, free shipping thresholds. The options are endless basically. So let's add some product upsell. Now I have some products. So this is actually fairly easy to do, whether it's on Shopify or WordPress or whatever site. Creating a product list is generally pretty easy. What's important here, of course, is that you QA the results because you want to make sure it fits every type of browser, every device, every screen size, versions. So it's always good to open it on different devices and make sure that it's confirmed to be working. Many of the tests fail just because there's some bug. And of course, if you're not aware of it, you're not really optimizing for the right things. We've gotten to the point where the test is ready. Now we've run it for a few weeks so we can analyze the results. What's important here is that we get to statistical significance, something we mentioned earlier. You want to make sure that your new version is the winner. Of course, if you keep it running for one day, it might be winning, but it's not yet statistically valid. So here we have some results. So we have the different variants, the amount of sessions, our sample size, the amount of transactions, very important because that's kind of what we're optimizing for. Conversion rate, here we can see that the simple clean variant is winning by 21%. And this unique selling points is losing by 22% against the control, the current version. Conversion rate is important, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Because if I make all products 20% cheaper, the conversion rate will go up, but the business will lose money. So the average order value is important as well. Combining these two, you basically get the per session value. And this is what really matters in most cases. Because it's a combination of these two. But often if your test is not directly affecting the average order value, meaning you're not upselling or changing prices, it's best to look at the conversion rate alone. Of course, we got revenue and then a few statistical metrics. But from this view, we can see that the simple and clean variant is doing pretty well. The data isn't conclusive yet, so we need to run it for longer. This tells us basically the main metric, but you want to dive deeper. You want to understand, is this change that we're making on the product page leading to more users adding to cart? And if more users add to cart, are they maybe dropping on checkout, right? Because their intention might change. So it's important that you set up the tracking to understand these other metrics as well. So here we can see that actually the add to cart rate went up by 11%. And then the checkout rate went up as well by 20%. So this could, for example, be by providing more information on the product page. Users are more confident to add to cart and therefore also to check out eventually. And then the last one I want to look at is basically the consistency across every single day. So here we can see that this variant, simple and clean, is basically the winner in almost every day. This is a good sign. So the results are not very volatile. And if there's consistency, there's more belief that this will eventually stick and this variant will be the winner. Now, this is an instance where we have a winner, but most of the time your test will actually fail. But a failing test is not necessarily a bad thing because it removes one worry that you have about a test, and now you ran it and you need to learn from it. So for example, this USP test is failing miserably, a 22% lower conversion rate. It leads to less profit, it has led to a lower add to cart rate, and then on the checkout, users leave more often as well. But what's important here is that we have defined a problem that we're trying to solve. So if our solution didn't solve the problem, it doesn't mean that the problem is gone. It means that the problem needs to be tackled in a different way. In this case, luckily we have a winner. But if this were not to be here, we would learn what went wrong. So here we can see that the add to cart rate actually went down. So we know that our test is not giving the user the confidence to add to cart. So we would go back, learn from this test that we ran, and maybe approach it in a different angle. The solution specifically is very hard to find right away, but the problem is there. So here we tried a cleaner version or a more detailed version, but maybe the way we communicate the details is still not good enough for the user. Maybe we're not highlighting the right unique selling points. Or maybe it's too cluttered and we're adding too much information and it should be just simpler. So iterate, go back, and test again. Okay, and then the final step on this test is to reach statistical significance. So far it's promising, but we're not there yet. Here we can see an improvement of 21%. Here's an odds to win of 95%. Very promising, but we're not there yet. So if we go back to another calculator, I plugged in the numbers. So on the control we have 10,000 visitors and 129 purchases. And on the other one we have 10,000 visitors and 152 purchases. This is clearly the winner, you would say, right? Because it has a 20% conversion improvement. However, we're looking at the confidence interval. So how confident is the data and how likely is it that it's just a random result? Because until you reach statistical significance, you cannot confirm that your test is a winner. So here we can actually see that there's no significant difference yet, and the p-value is 0.1. And generally the confidence level you want is 0.05. Sorry, 95%, which is equal to p is 0.05. So we're almost there. So currently the confidence level we have is 90%, and we wanted to get it to 95%. If I would bring it down to 90%, it's going to say sample 2 is more successful, but 90% is not enough. Move it to 95. So we're going to keep this test running for a little bit longer, and then we'll reach statistical significance. But the outcome could be completely different from what it is today. Unlikely, but it's possible. Okay, so there you have it. I've taken you through the exact steps we follow as a CRO agency to improve the e-commerce brands. If you're interested to improve your conversion rate, we offer a guaranteed ROI, meaning we will never charge you more than the money we'll generate for you. So if you're interested, definitely leave a comment down below or schedule a call with us.